We are indeed with the Five Musketeers, and be I'm sorry, everyone. We really are just having one of those days. Brent and I are disappearing and reappearing. I mean, I've definitely broadcast from here before, so it's not where I am. But I do see that the entire mountain is just covered in cloud, and there's some really, really bad weather. So it is purely the situation at the moment. Luckily, we managed to turn the car key, or else I really would have been thumping my head on the steering wheel. Oh well, we are still here. And as I said, the Musketeers, I thought were going to go and find themselves some dinner, but they're actually now just moving us further into a no-signal area and sleeping. A rough day, I think, for all of them. It's interesting watching the scraps that they keep having. It doesn't look playful, and it doesn't sound playful when they fight that way. And what's been interesting is that it's been between one cheetah and D'Artagnan both times that I've seen it today. And D'Artagnan's always in some way the center of the fight, whether he's the one being picked on or whether he's the one doing the picking on. And I mean, it's not just my imagination. That has been the case the entire time that I've followed these five boys. And I suspect it's been the same cheetah today, both times, that he's gone for. And both times it's almost been, the cheetah went ahead and lay down and then started chirping at him. Chirp! And then he ran forward and jumped on it and batted it, and you got the growling and the unsettledness in the whole group. I don't know that it looked that playful to me. But I'm not sure what it was all about, and it seems to be forgotten very quickly. Okay. Sleepy cheetah are looking very sleepy indeed. Remember earlier on, James promised that he'd go off in search of a different spotted cat to show you. Let's go and find out which one he has found.
Right, hello everybody. I have some wonderful news for you, but before I tell you what the wonderful news is, we are going to reenact what just happened. Liam and I got off this car to go looking for Hosanna, and we couldn't find him. We got very sweaty while we did it, and then we were driving along, and Liam says to me, Liam, what did you say? Yes, if you were Hosanna, you'd be lying on your back in the shade. And I said, with an ice-cold lager, a bitterly cold, ice-cold lager. And Liam said, yes, that would be nice. And then, as we were arriving about this point, I was looking right. Liam, what did you say?
Right underneath that tree.
Oh, yes, there he is, underneath that tree. And that is what Liam saw. Isn't that wonderful? I'm just going to call it in quickly. And I'm not sure that I mean, are we sure that is Hosanna?
Not sure.
I don't know who that is. It's a leopard. There are Thandi's tracks are in this area. Anyway, let's go and have a look. Station's located Leopard on Ledwood Road at the bend where it turns towards the south. I'm not sure who it is just yet. We'll keep you updated. She's just off the road. Now, of course, I didn't see anything here. VM said, there he is. Let's just see. I'm not convinced this is a young male. It might be. I'm not going to get too close. Okay, let's have a look-see. It looks like Thandi's angry face to me. And a mangled bottom left canine. I think this is the dear mother. Does she have a mangled bottom left canine? I seem to remember she does. She's a 3-3 female, if I remember correctly. And that's what this is. How cool is that, everyone? Station, this looks like Thandi here on Deadwood Road. Ah, what a joy. Well done, Viam. You've made our afternoon. She does look a little bit angry. Well, I think if you had cubs, you'd also be a little bit angry. Now, no doubt, many of you are saying wow to this, and it is very wow indeed. She's growling at us. She's just giving us a little lift of her teeth every so often. So I'm going to reverse slightly, just increase the space. That's exactly what I picked up as we just turned off the road. We're just going to go onto the road, so she's got a bit more space between us and her. She will, I think, almost exactly like any human mother who has just given birth or is in the process of looking after young children, I suspect you'll find that she's just a little bit tired, fraught and irritated generally with life. So we'll just stop there. You got a decent view there, Viam? Yeah. Now, Phil, you're wondering if she's still got little cubs. We think she does. We're hoping desperately that we're going to confirm how many there are and who they are and where they live very soon. Now, I'm hearing on the radio that there were 2 female leopards found on Djuma this morning, but I'm really struggling to believe that. I think one was probably Hosanna. Yes, in fact, that's exactly what's going on. The incompetence going into my right ear right now is going to make my brain explode. I may just turn it off completely. There we go. I've done it now. No, she wouldn't, Stacey. You say, would she have the babies out this early? No. So I got back here. When did I get back here? About, must be 2 weeks ago now, I guess. And we think she'd just given birth. Tristan had eyed out a potential den spot. He hadn't seen her go into it, but he thought that's where she was. And so I think these cubs are probably between 2 and 3 weeks old. Now that means that there's no ways they'll be out of the den just yet, and it means that we're probably going to wait another 3 weeks before we start to view them. That said, we are certainly going to try and find out how many there are and where they are. Now the interesting thing, of course, is that Hosanna was absolutely in this area as well, and if you were watching yesterday afternoon's drive, you'll know, of course, that he pitched up to say hello to Tingana, an astonishing spectacle of watching him fearlessly walking up to his father spitting, hissing and making noise at him, and he just lay down next to him as if to say, come on, Dad, can't we just be friends? And wouldn't it just be something if he came to visit, what is she? She's not his aunt, she's his cousin. In fact, she's not, she's a sister, yes, exactly. That's absolutely correct. Now, Monique, you say, do I think she's moved the den? Monique, we do think she's moved the den. We're not sure to where, though. It won't be around here. I think we're a long way from where she originally gave birth. We think she may well have moved the den away from the original termite mound, possibly down into the drainage line that is just between the junction of Nyala Road South and Central Road. And I think, you know what, if you don't, obviously to many of you, you won't know what that means, what I'm talking about. But, you know what, somebody came in here this morning. This is interesting. Somebody came into this area this morning. I can see a vehicle track. I wonder if that's why she isn't looking a little bit irritated. Anyway, if you want to see where those roads are, if you go to the Google Earth, I actually think quite a few of them are marked on Google Earth, so you can probably find where we are, or the area that I'm talking about, where we think her second den is. We are just going to give her some space. She can be a little bit ornery, this leopardess, and ornery she most certainly is going to be if she's got 3 or 2 little cubs and we're putting pressure on her. I just have a feeling it's 3. I've got absolutely no idea. I also don't know where Tumba is. I haven't seen him for a long while since I've got back, and I don't know when he was last seen. Do you know him?
Negative.
No. I also didn't realise that she'd lost that. Well, she hasn't lost her bottom left canine, but she certainly got it cracked. So it's not as sharp as it once was. She's 11 now, of course. Good age for a leopardess. And whenever I talk about teeth, of course, I think of my own missing premolar on the left. It's pretty hot out here today. It's about 37 degrees Celsius or so, 99 degrees Fahrenheit. Maybe a bit of a storm brewing in the far west. I don't think it'll hit us today. But otherwise, the only other sounds I can hear are flies, vzz, vzz, Franklin in the distance, just little odd squeaks and squawks and tweets from the birds, and then a little bit of wind noise rustling through the early summer greenery. Ellie, you're wondering about how altricial leopard cubs are when they're born. In other words, are they born with their eyes closed like domestic cats? They are. They are born with their eyes closed, utterly helpless, almost completely immobile. And that's why the most vulnerable time of their lives is probably between now and the time that they start to climb trees, which will be at around 6 weeks. They will attempt to scrabble up trees, because then they can get away from hyenas, of course. Interesting why she was just uncomfortable with us being as close as we are. I often think it's our voices, you know. Sometimes if you just sit, they don't react, and then sometimes you'll start talking. Certainly Karula used to do that sometimes. She revved a few vehicles quite badly, and it was normally when there were guests or guides talking loudly. Kathy, you say, what are the chances that she would abandon her cubs? At this stage, I'd say fairly poor. I don't think she'd do that. There's no reason for it. There's no drought on, where she's given birth the perfect time. There are plenty of impala lambs around for her to eat. That's easy pickings for a leopardess like this. So there's no reason that she'd abandon her cubs. She doesn't have a record of abandoning her cubs. So no, I don't think she'll abandon them. I suppose in times of great drought and times of, enormous difficulty, if there's nothing to eat and her milk reserves were so poor, or that the cubs were taking so much out of her that she was going to struggle to survive, well, then she might abandon them. It's interesting, in animals like this, you know, the advantage of abandoning cubs in order to mate again and have more when times are more favourable is, or the advantages of abandoning them versus trying to sort of eke out a living rather than waiting for better times, are hugely greater than the advantages of waiting for better times. So it's not impossible that a leopardess in tough times will abandon their cubs, and there are lots of animals in the mammal kingdom or in the mammal class that will do that. And as for human beings, it's very difficult for us to accept that, of course, because it's unthinkable to us. But that's also because we live in communities, and therefore the responsibility of feeding youngsters doesn't fall only to the mother. Popfur, you must be a new viewer. You say, is this leopardess wild or captive? Popfur, this leopardess is as wild as a leopard can be. If I got anywhere near her on foot, she would do one of two things. She would either run away, she would almost certainly growl at me, but if her cubs were anywhere nearby, she would come at me and quite possibly tear me to pieces, which of course wouldn't be very pleasant at all. She's totally wild. The only reason she's letting us sit this close to her is that she was born around and near vehicles, and so she doesn't associate us with a threat. But you saw, we got to within about 15 meters or so, 45 feet of her, 50 feet, and she was very dissatisfied. She snarled at us and she gave us a little bit of a growl, and so we increased that distance to about, we're probably 40 meters away now, which is just over, goodness, my maths is hitting me down, so 180 to almost 200 feet. And now she's fine. So she's not captive in the slightest, and she most certainly is not tame. That is a completely wild animal there. As are all the animals here. We're sitting in an area that is 8.5 million acres in extent. We don't traverse all of that, but it is part of the greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park. And so between us and Mozambique, Zimbabwe in the north and Swaziland in the south, there are no fences, and all of the animals living here are completely wild. And she's just turned around, which is very unkind of her. Oh, a little lizard. Wasim, you say, am I at a safe distance? Yes, at this distance I am at a safe distance. She seems to be particularly pleased with us here. She's turned around, she's relaxed. She's not looking at us anymore, worrying about where we are. So yeah, I think we're fine over here. I'm going to have to reassess that situation now because we obviously can't see her properly. So I'm going to move around a bit and see if we can't get another view. This is going to be the best kind of distance we want to stay from her. If she got really upset, she'd get up and she'd charge us maybe, and she'd probably stop with about 3 meters away. And even though I wouldn't feel like there was an enormous danger, I tell you what, when that happens, there are two feelings I have. One, of course, is fear for my life and Viam's, and the other is that I've done something wrong. I have irritated an animal to the extent that she has chosen to engage me and say, go away. And that would make me feel very dreadful. So what we're going to try and do is just move around the side and see if we can't get a slightly better view of her. What we don't want to do is put her under any pressure at all. Atomic X, you ask a question, would a leopard adopt an abandoned lion cub? No, absolutely not. She might eat it. She would almost certainly not adopt it. Can you see it there, Viam? Back of it? Say when. Yeah? That's not a great shot. We will try and go in a little bit closer now that she's relaxed, but you can see she keeps looking at us. She's not going to sleep. So I'm just going to give her a bit of space. I wonder if she didn't have a bad experience this morning. So no, leopards will not adopt lion cubs. Has it ever happened before? Oof. You know, you see these stories of things like that happening out here. It would be very it's although when I first heard the question I thought that's ridiculous, there's no ways it would ever happen. It would be fascinating to know what would happen if a lactating female leopard who lost her cubs was suddenly given a lion cub of the same age as her lost cubs, and whether or not, I imagine in a captive environment, whether or not she would be prepared to suckle them. I suspect not.
That lioness in the Serengeti that adopted a leopard cub.
Was there?
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. So we've got information coming in from behind me here that there was a lioness in the Serengeti who adopted a leopard cub. And what happened?
I don't know.
VM says he doesn't know what happened. We must googly that. All right, well, while we're thinking about these strange things, let's head across to Tristan. I'm not sure what he's on the search for, but I've no doubt he'll tell you himself.
Well, I am on the search for various things, James. Unfortunately, my lion tracks crossed north into Buffelshoek, which means that I can't follow them any further. And so now I've found myself a kudu that is just by itself and meandering around, and it's walking almost as the way I feel, in that it is hot, it is kind of just plodding along, trying to find some semblance of shade. Now, I'm sure there must be more of them. At the moment, I can only just see the one, so I'm going to try and just go forward so that Seb's got some sort of a view, because I've given Seb not much to work with there. So we're just going to coast forward slightly. Don't disappear on us. I thought she might, but let's see. Maybe we can sneak up behind her. But it's strange that she's by herself. She's not exactly heavily pregnant. There's no sign of her kind of giving birth recently either. So I'm quite perplexed as to why she's by herself. Maybe Thandi has walked through here and separated the herd out slightly. You never know. Maybe they kind of bounded away from one another, and that's why she's separate. Or the rest of them are somewhere in these thickets close by. In fact, actually, I can see some already on my left-hand side. So she's just the first of the grouping to have crossed over the road. And you can see now that they are starting to come out. So they've come out from a drainage line off Nyala Road, sort of Batalia, that area, and they're now going to come out to start getting up and into the open for the evening. Mia, you're wondering what the name is, or what the meaning for the name kudu is. Now, Seb, I'm going to try and get you a better view. Just give me 2 seconds. So, Mia, the name kudu comes from the sound they make when they run. There is no particular meaning to it. It's just the sound that they make when they run. So, kudu, 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 as they kind of trot along. And so that's where the name came from. And I'm trying to find the rest of them. They were in here. Can you see them? There's one right here. Perfect. So, a little young male just off to our left. Hello, boy. Yes, you are beautiful. I love when they sort of look at you with those big ears and those big rounded eyes. It's always very pleasant to be able to see them and to spend time with kudu. I like kudu. Unfortunately, they generally are a little shy, and so this is what you normally see from them. As soon as you kind of get anywhere close to them, they try and get behind something just to be able to camouflage, just to be able to try and blend in. And Seb is giggling to me behind me because he's having a tough time of it. Every time he kind of gets them, it's hide and seek, exactly, Seb. So always nice to spend time with them, but generally it's always obscured visuals. It's seldom that we get kudus right out in the open for any length of time whatsoever. But there we go. Nice. Always good to see them. So I think now that James has found Thandi, that was my kind of plan B once the lion tracks didn't work, to go and try and have a look for her. So I think now that he's found Thandi, I'm not quite sure actually where I'm going to go. I might just go and check around the Mulawati, just see what's happening. I know Hosanna was seen this morning, but I have a funny feeling that he's maybe somewhere close to where Thandi is, so I don't want to bump into James or disturb that area too much, so I'm not going to go into that section. Hopefully James will be able to find Hosanna somewhere close to Thandi. I believe he was in that particular area as well. So I'll just have a little look around and kind of see what else. Maybe Hosana's moved towards the Mulawati, you never know. Might find him lying up in some of those areas. There's a few little mud wallows and water points that I just want to check in case there isn't a sign of somebody else. Also, with our Gari Tower working again, I suppose I can go and check the western side and see what we can find on that side of the world. Kenneth, you're wondering what the difference between greater and lesser kudu is. Now, I don't think I've got my book that has got lesser kudu in them, so that's going to make life a little bit more tricky. Maybe I can try and find a picture quickly for you guys. Let's have a look. Let's see. I'm just trying to think if I've got a picture of one. I don't think I do, so I'll have to just quickly pull one up. Give me 2 seconds. But lesser kudu essentially are much smaller individuals. They have horn structure that is much more similar to a nyala than a greater kudu, so it doesn't twist as much as what you see from a greater kudu. Also distribution, so it's a situation where lesser kudu occur further north of where we are, up in Kenya, and so in Tsavo, in those areas. There's lots of them up there. I used to see quite a few, and in fact, where I was, we even had a fairly habituated one that used to walk around and follow some of the guys around. But there we go. That's what a... Hold on, I'm just going to try and get this image. Hold on. There we go. Okay. So that's basically what it looks like. It is very similar. If you look at a kind of kudu coloration, very similar to the kudus that we see here in terms of colors. Much, much smaller though. Doesn't quite have those bulky shoulders that you see on our kudus. And you see the horn structure. It does curve and turn, but not nearly as much as what we see on our greater kudu. They also tend to have these white bars on the neck that our greater kudus don't have, and then they seem to have a uniform coloration from head to tail. There's a little bit of a change, but not as drastic as what we see. You also see on the male a lack of a beard. In the male greater kudu, there's a very long beard that hangs down in that area, and so it's a bit different all over. Now, I've managed to find something else that is just as rare as a lesser kudu, and that is Herbeth causa. So you can see there comes Herbie. Herbie's been helping us trying to find Thandi. He's trying to keep him going, and there's Ralph with him, just also helping out in another tracker that Herbie's busy training. So there's Herbie waving. Hello, Herbie. And Herbie's doing a sterling effort, and so is Ralph. Like I say, they were just putting them out just to try and get tracks and to try and work out what's going on with Thandi, to try and find her this morning, because I know Ralph and Herbie had their tracks this morning. So nice to see them out and about. I think they're heading home, and well, rightly so. It's hot, it's humid, and so I think a cold beverage is probably in order for them. So Sean, you're asking if kudus have horns or antlers. So here in Southern Africa or South Africa, we have no indigenous species of antelopes that have any antlers. All of our antelope here in the Sabi Sand section have horns. So greater kudu has horns, lesser kudu also has horns. And the difference is obviously that horns are bone that is fused to the skull with this keratin sheath, as opposed to an antler, which is a cartilage that grows seasonally. Now, there's been a lot of debate recently as to whether or not we do have any animals in Africa with antlers, and I believe that we do have one deer, apparently a native deer species to Africa, which I actually only learnt about today. I'm not sure who brought it up, but speaking to James about it, and he was telling me, and I forget the name now of that deer, but it has, I think it starts with a B. I'll get it eventually, but anyway, that deer, it does occur, and so that's the only one that I know of that's got antlers out of our animals down this side of the world. So it's interesting, and maybe it's to do with the seasons and those kind of things. We have a very temperate climate, which means that we don't get too much of an extreme between summer and winter, that they might keep them. I don't know. It's interesting. It's obviously a very kind of different thing to the northern hemisphere antelope, or ungulates should be called, not antelopes, because deers and those things are not antelopes, but the northern hemisphere ungulates. Right, now over here on our right, since we are on the family of kudu and lesser kudu and all of these things, there is my favorite antelope on the right hand side. So we had a look at a small male kudu, and this is a large male nyala. So nyalas, I absolutely love these guys, and I'm so glad we get to see as many as we do. They have these long shaggy coats, and the horns on them are incredible, and the markings themselves, I don't know why, they just fill me with joy for some reason. It's one of those animals that I like seeing, and always typically stop when I see a nyala, big nyala male, and just kind of watch them as they move around. I like the way that they walk as well, so calculated and kind of precise the way that they go. The front foot will go forward, the back foot into that where that front foot had stepped in direct register. So they're very calculated about the way they move. They seem to know exactly what's going on around them. See how that one just leant back and how well the horns are designed? So a lot of the times you would think that these massive horn structures would be a pain in the backside for an animal that moves through places like this. And while it is a pain in the backside, their horns are designed in such a way that they just fold ever so neatly onto the back of the shoulders, and they can just walk, and their eyes will just go straight over their nose. It's not ideal because they do lose a bit of field of sight, but they're still able to see what's going on. It's only for a short period as they duck under between vegetation. So it's a very clever system that they have, and one that works quite well for them. Right, Nyala disappeared. Where to next, Seb? Where do you want to go? Mulawati? Let's take Mamba. I want to check one little mud wallow that's off Mamba. It's a little hidden mud wallow that Herbie showed me, and so since we've just seen Herbie, now I might as well go and have a little look and check there. It's just reminded me to check that water hole, and it's not actually too far from where Hosanna was this morning, so you never know, he might have moved in that direction. I believe the guys said to me they left him going north towards Mamba, and so hopefully he'll be in somewhere in that vicinity. There's a lot of prey animals around, so we've seen kudu, we've seen nyala, we've seen a few impalas on this road already. It's good because it means that if anything happens in this particular section and we get a situation where animals are around, then, or predators around, there's a number of these animals that will be able to start shouting and alarm calling and indicate to us that there is something happening. So it's good to have those kind of things in this proximity to where they last saw Hosanna, and maybe we'll get lucky with Hosanna. If we don't, it doesn't matter. It's just such a nice afternoon, and the sun is starting to go down now, so it's getting cooler and far more pleasant to be out. Now, while I contemplate my next maneuver and where exactly I'm going to head, let's go to a man who's, well, calculated exactly where to go and was very lucky this afternoon and found the beautiful Thandi.
Yes, I calculated very little of what we achieved today. It was largely down to VM and his directions and then his eyes. But I'll take it. Now we've got some impala that are approaching Thandi. I don't think they're stalking her. I don't think they know she's here. Likewise, I don't think she knows they are there. She is just under the tree. We've come round the other side of it. And we've come round the other side because she just lay down behind it. But you can see she's still got that slightly sort of angry cat look about her at the moment. Panting away in the heat. There is a rattling testicular not too far away going choo choo choo, taka taka taka, choo choo, taka taka taka. And I do wonder to myself if perhaps those impala are not thinking, is there something around? Because they definitely do respond to the alarm calls of the animal, of the birds, not the animal, and the other mammals, of course. Anyway, that's what's going on here. Now, I think it's going to be worth sitting here just simply because I think she might get up and go towards the den site at some stage. Linda, as she lies down there, you say, would she take on a young buffalo in order to feed her cubs? Linda, no, I think it's highly unlikely that she'd take one on to feed her cubs. She may well take one on because she felt like eating one. Big female leopard will take a very small buffalo calf, absolutely. Remember, those cubs, though, are going to be drinking milk for at least sort of 3 to 6 months. Well, certainly more than 3 months, possibly up to 6 months. And they will start on their solids from about 6 weeks. But remember that she will have to take them to a kill, and that she will not take a kill to them, and there would be no reason for her to take on something like a buffalo calf unless she found it isolated from the herd, because of course taking on a buffalo in a herd is dangerous on account of the other buffalo in the herd. And so, given how many baby impala there are around the place, well, I think that the chances of her trying to take on a buffalo calf are extremely small. around. She's smelling things every time the wind blows towards her, and it's not us she's looking at. Maybe she's picked up the smell of fresh impala. Karen, a good question that has no real answer, unfortunately, which is, of course, often the best kind of question. You say, how many leopard cubs in a litter? Well, Karen, 2 or 3 is usual, but there can be 1, there can be 4. And I'm not sure what the record is. I suspect it's probably in captivity around 6. But it would be impossible for a leopardess to raise 6 leopards on her own. Highly, highly unlikely. So I think you'd find that... In fact, I've never seen one raise 3. I've seen them give birth to 3, and I've seen them look after 3 for a while, but almost inevitably one of them or 2 of them dies. So I don't think... I think it's highly unlikely that it would be more than 3. I'm just trying to see if I can't find a particularly definitive message on that. Yes, it's 2 to 4 cubs, but I mean, we knew that. Let's go with a world record once off of 6, say, or 5 or 6. Be highly unlikely, and the normal one being 2 to 3.
I say 1.7.
You say 1.7, do you, VM? Well, as you are the leopard spotter, we will give you 1.7 for the day. Now, we have no idea, like I say, how many she's given birth to yet. Tamba was her last one. He's now 7 months old, and he was single. He was on his own. She's just growling a little bit there. Just watch her carefully. I'm going to speak a little bit more quietly. I mean, we're at least 200 feet from her. I mean, if she was... she's not. She's got hiccups. Or a hairball. She's not growling at us. Joe, you're wondering if leopards will hunt during the night. You'll read in textbooks that leopards are largely nocturnal. In other words, that they will hunt almost exclusively at night. I have found the opposite. Well, not the opposite, but I found that they will basically hunt whenever they can, whenever they want to. So yes, they will hunt at night, but they will almost certainly hunt during the day. And I've so often seen leopards moving in the very hottest part of the day. They're marking their territories, going from one point to the other, or hunting. Much more so than lions do. She keeps looking up to the top of that tree. It'd be so nice to watch her go up there. So yes, they will hunt at night or day. Just see her ears pinned back on the top of her head there. And of course she's listening behind her. It's because she's uncomfortable. And I think that discomfort is again evidenced by her movements. She's constantly getting up and lying down, getting up and lying down. And I think it's the heat, and I also think she's eaten something fairly large. Isn't she lovely? Look at the way the light's catching her. Bit of a clean. Always important if you're a cat to have a bit of a clean. It always amazes me that the power that they have in their back legs like that, and the sharpness of their claws doesn't lacerate the skin around their ears and necks when they scratch like that, because you can actually hear the skin going. She obviously knows exactly how hard to push and how hard not to. Okay, let's see where she goes. Let's also try and see how big her tummy is, how fat she is. Oh, dear. Now, I don't know about any of you, but you know, when somebody says to me, oh, she looks like Tamba, or Tamba looks like her, or Tamba looks like Tingana, I just can't see it. And somebody said yesterday, when Hosana and Tingana were sitting next to each other, was somebody in the final control as I was watching it. I said, yeah, well, look at them, they look the same. And I just cannot see it. And I think that is, and I wouldn't believe those people if I didn't know, for example, that some people are able to identify a leopard on sight. They'll see an ear and say, oh, well, that's, in the same way that as they'll identify their best friend in a crowd. They'll say, well, that's Mvula, that's Thandi, that's Hosana. But I don't have the mechanism in me to do it. And I wonder, I'm very bad at recognizing people. Oh, there's the kill. Haha, right there. Baby impala. No wonder there's an impala ewe around here. I'm very sure that this lonely ewe standing around here is the mother. She's gone now. I don't see her anymore, Viam, do you? Yeah, I'm sure that's the mother. And Viam was just saying to me how he hates to see this kind of thing. He hates to see the youngsters killed like this. And I know what he means. Look at her. I've just got a radio call to deal with. I'm just going to talk to Rex on quickly. Rex, you just keep coming, I can hear you. She's not very relaxed, so just keep your distance when you get here. Shall we back up a bit? What I meant by that, of course, was I'm going to back up a bit. I should have given VM a little bit more warning than I did. How's that? It'll work for now. Let's see what she does with it. That's probably why she keeps looking up into the trees. You can hear the gorgeous orange-breasted bush shrike. The wind just starting to blow as a big grey bank builds in the southwest. Probably won't deposit anything for us. Now, King Quad, you're wondering about her teeth, and if they break, what will happen to her. If the top tooth of the broken one there snapped off, I think she'd be okay. If the other bottom one broke, she'd be less effective. But, she'll have other methods of killing things, so I think she'll be all right. I'm just going to quickly get on the radio again. Go for James, go ahead. A few people getting mobile now and deciding they'd like to come and see Thandi. We will try and get another view. Isn't that a lovely view of her tail there? I'm just going to let Rexon find a spot, and then we'll move in a bit closer. Mike, where are you? From which side? Okay, I'll just keep coming. Oh, of course, Tom, just make your way straight here. I'll move out when you get here. We've had a nice time with them, so they're going to come here. We won't be able to stay for the rest of the next hour, I don't think. But for now, we'll remain and enjoy the view of Thandi's tail. Now, Eric, you ask a good question. You say, is there a time when a leopard is, say, in heat or about to breed, when she's to be avoided, when she'll be irritable? Well, I think she's kind of in that state now. I don't recall her leopards in heat being any more sort of confiding than they are at other times. But I do know that leopards who are looking after youngsters, like she is, of course, can often feel a little bit kind of irritated by things. So, I mean, not avoided, but certainly given space. We can try and move a bit now, I think. What do you think, Vumpi? Shall we go back or forward? Let's try back first, because it'll be the least disturbance. No, that's not going to get us a great view. I'm going to do a little bit of a turn around here. Oh, you will. We'll get a nice view here. How's that, Wimpy? Is that all right? One of those lovely early summer afternoons now. Wind is coming, lovely smells. Leopard in the grass. The sound of machine gun fire, which isn't in fact machine guns, but highly excited shutters crashing on a vehicle nearby. Now, Chris, no, she won't. In the same way that, you know, when Joy asked her question about the buffalo, would she kill a buffalo to feed her cubs, she will absolutely not take this back to the den. They don't do that. You know what, if the den was 3 feet from here, or, I don't know, say 100 meters, 300 feet, she might pick it up and take it there if the cubs were a little bit older. But remember, by the time they're 6, they're not going to be living in a den anymore anyway, or 6 weeks or so. So, no, normally they don't take meat to the cubs, they take the cubs to the meat by the time they're old enough to move with her. There we go. I think we've got quite a nice view, actually, compared with the view everyone else has got. Shame. I can't see the mother impala, but I think she's around here still. Poor thing. Oh, she's just looked up at the other vehicle, and now the machine gun fire of the cameras on the other car have begun. While they shoot this leopard, all of them taking many pictures to popularise the world's most beautiful cat, let's head across to Tristan Dix, who has not only found some signal, but also some signal.
I do indeed, James, and I'm sorry I left you on your own for quite some time. I didn't realize we hadn't got that much signal. But anyway, we are up and running, and we have a dwarf mongoose who's looking very alert. And the reason why the dwarf mongoose are looking alert is because they've just bumped into a slender mongoose. A slender mongoose came running from our vehicle, trying to go into that particular mound, saw the whole bunch of dwarf mongoose, and then turned and scattered. So I'm going to try go forward and see if I can find the slender mongoose as well. Hopefully the dwarf will stay there, and we get a close-up of them. If we can't find our slender ran off to the right. It didn't look as though it was too perturbed by life and wasn't really actively running too fast. It was kind of just trotting off, but I don't see it. It kind of went towards that fallen over tree over there, but there's nothing that I can see now. And it's interesting because VM and I have seen this slender mongoose, I don't even know how many times. Every time I drive this road, it pops out in a similar direction or similar area, and I get to see it. So it's quite amazing actually to see how kind of consistent they are in the area that they operate. And I'm sure there must be a mound or a hole or something that they're spending a lot of time in. But there you can see the dwarf mongoose. They obviously using this one in particular, and so there's no space for a slender mongoose when there's a whole bunch of dwarf mongoose in the mound itself. Now, unfortunately, I think there's a car behind us, so I just want to try and wave them through and let them come. It might just mean that our dwarf mongoose pops its head back in. Yes, there we go. There's a couple others on the other side as well. So you can see why the slender mongoose got a bit of nervous. As soon as it kind of got here and it realized that there was 3 or 4 or 5 of these mongoose, it's, one is one thing, but a whole bunch means that it's got to back down a little bit and move off. So there we go. They'll pop back out again. Once the car has gone past, they certainly will come out. They're very curious animals, and they like to kind of see what's going on. So you see them coming up onto mounds and having a little look around and look at the passing traffic that's going. And I find the ones that are on these main roads often are the most relaxed. That mongoose is not sitting more than, I would say, maybe 10 meters from where I am at the moment, and it's now not even facing us too much. Every now and then it'll give us a glance, but otherwise is fairly relaxed with our presence, which is very cool to see. And I love spending time around these guys. They're always up to something and busy. There we go. There's another one coming, just poking its head over just to say hello. This looks like quite a young one, doesn't it? It looks like a little baby. I'm sure it's a little baby. How cute is that? Now, I believe a lot of you are agreeing in that it is a very cute, and lots of ahs and oohs that are going on about our little dwarf mongoose, and they do evoke that emotion, don't they? They are naughty little things, and they're all over the place and constantly scavenging around for food and making lots of noise and doing their thing and chasing all kinds of predators and that they have, like snakes. But they are cute, I must be honest, and I do enjoy watching them. I think we're going to leave them though, because they're all ducking inside, and I think there's another car on its way. Now, I'm absolutely intrigued by what's going on with Thandi and Hosana, because I know Noel found Hosana in this exact same place this morning is to where James has got Thandi, and so I'm a bit kind of sort of wondering as to where Hosana has ended up. Maybe he's in that area too, maybe he's going to kind of show his face that side, but there's definitely nothing that I can see that goes south back towards Chitwa. So if he's not there, I've checked all the other mud wallows that I would expect to find Hosana at, but I don't see any single sign of him. So he maybe is lurking in that particular area and just watching them. I can actually see where James is. He's just a bit north of me at the moment. So I'm going to go down to Chitwa Dam regardless and just go and check around. You never know, maybe Hosana has been in this particular section somewhere and he's kind of moved back down towards the waterhole. Maybe Thandi chased him off that kill. You never know. It would be interesting if he did, or she did, should I say, because he's had an eventful past couple of days with Tingana, which was absolutely phenomenal. I was watching yesterday. That sighting was amazing, just to see the proximity that he got to and the relaxed nature. I mean, I know Tingana was aggressive in that he was growling and showing that he was dominant over Hosana, but the fact that Hosana got that close, and well, Tingana eventually at one stage was just had his head down, both of them sleeping right next to each other, absolutely insane. It was really cool to see, and obviously it's the same as the 3 that we had together with Tumba when they were doing the same thing. And so for now, even though Hosana seems to be set on and spray tail and spraying on trees and various other things, it seems as though Tingana is still very tolerant for some reason. Why, I'm not quite sure, but interesting nonetheless. And maybe it's because Hosana hasn't been scent marking anywhere where Tingana actually has been yet. Remember, where we saw him scent mark was actually not that close to here. It was around Treehouse Dam, and I know that Tingana hasn't been seen in that area or his tracks for quite some time, so maybe he just hasn't picked up on Hosana's scent marking capabilities. But there is a beautiful bird that is just sitting at a eye level, which is very, very interesting, because normally these guys are a little bit higher, and so now we can actually get to see their coloration. So it's our lilac-breasted roller, and I love when they sit on top of these trees like that. They really are beautiful, and especially when you've got a darker backdrop, sometimes when it's the blue of the sky, you don't really notice their coloration nearly as much as when they're on this kind of a backdrop where there's a bit of greens and you can see those blues really popping out against the background. Now, Joy, you're wondering if Hosana would be a potential threat to Thandi's cubs. So it's possible at the end of the day. I mean, Hosana being a young male leopard, it's possible that he could, get hold of Thandi's cubs, but I would imagine that she would be so feisty with him if he came anywhere near that he would get quite a hiding and probably be off on his own and move away. I don't think he's got that drive yet to be territorial in terms of dominating and trying to take over. And yesterday's behavior, I think it was yesterday, was it yesterday, Seb? Yes, it was yesterday. Yesterday's behavior indicates that if he wasn't in a situation where he was trying to front up to Tingana, we would have seen a lot more of him growling and hissing at Tingana, and he wouldn't have laid down and rolled and those kind of things like he did. So it's a very different situation, and I don't think he's quite at that point where he's trying to assert himself over a female. I think he still probably sees Thandi as somewhat of a mother figure and kind of sees her as potentially a food source and something that he can follow around. So I don't think it's the same. I don't think he would be too much of a danger, because I think she would be able to deter him quite quickly and keep him away from it. But you never know. I mean, leopards are leopards and they are wild animals, and there's no rules and no books that are written that they read to say that they can't do these things. So it's possible, but I don't think so. I think Thandi would be able to keep him at bay. And if she can keep big males like Hosana away from cubs, like Tingana away from cubs, then I would imagine Hosana would be the same situation. Right. While I head down towards Chitwa Dam, and the weather is starting to change a bit of a breeze blowing, thankfully, but while I head down there to see what's happening around the dam, let's go back to James and the beautiful Thandi in her superb coloration in the afternoon light.
Well, yes, sort of superb coloration, but for the cloud that's coming up, which is not a bad thing. I would just like to correct myself. VM said to me, is Tumba really only 7 months old? And I said to myself, no, that's absolute rubbish. He was born in July, of course, so he is 1 year. He's 17 months old, is what I meant. So Tumba, for those of you who don't know, is her previous cub. He's 17 months old now, not 7 months. And she's having a good old chew now on that little impala. I'm going to give her another 1 minute in this position, and then I'm going to move around to the other side. And you can see there's no sunlight anymore. It's dipping behind some clouds. Now Philip, you're saying which animal out here has the largest and smallest circles of fear, and you've defined the circle of fear as the distance within which an animal will react to you, I guess, because of course the circle of fight and the circle of flight will be very different. So let's call it the circle at which that they will react to you. That's a really good question. I'm going to say that the smallest one, in other words, the animal that you can get closest to without it reacting to you on foot, would be out here probably a hyena. I'm thinking carefully here. I'm going to say a hyena as an adult. If a leopard grows up with people, you can get quite close to the cubs, and we've been within 10 meters of Shongile and Hosana on foot, and they don't react. So that's a pretty small circle of fear. The largest circle of fear, in other words, the animal, when an animal will react, the greatest distance will be the antelope species. You'll find that they will not let you get within 100 meters quite often, and sometimes even more than that. Elephants, remarkably, are quite nervy. They don't let you get very close before they react. In fact, as soon as they see you and perceive you, they will react. Sometimes if you're far enough away, it'll just be to look at you, but they will react. I've walked very close to buffalo bulls before without them moving. I've walked quite far from buffalo bulls with them reacting very adversely. And I remember an experience we had, Brian and Steph and I, last year, when a buffalo phalanx, there were about 6 or 7 of them, saw us at about 150 meters or so. They got into a line, they started coming at us. Not running, but walking with purpose, and we had to skedaddle quite quickly. So I think it just depends on the situation, but I think those are the kinds of scenarios, the ones that I've painted for you, that you'd expect. That's a very good point. Project Alpha, thank you for that. I didn't think of that. You said you can walk up to a pangolin. Yes, you can. Absolutely, a pangolin won't react to you. Good point. That is a mammal.
And a pop adder.
And a puff adder, yes. I suppose a snake, some snake species. I was more thinking mammals, but yes, fair enough. Keep them coming. Oh, I'd also like to correct myself again. I mentioned the Greenland shark the other day as the longest living vertebrate organism, or the longest living animal in the world. And it was pointed out to me, of course, that Chinese clam, whose name I think was Ming actually, was over 500 years old. The Chinese clam called Ming. And I think that's the oldest animal. Ooh, Debbie, you make a good point. You say, where do I think the wild dogs fit on the circle of fear? They've got a pretty small circle of fear, you're right. Yeah. I think absolutely wild dogs would be a good one. Probably even not smaller than a leopard cub, but certainly smaller than a leopard adult. Just going to see if we can get another view around this way. I'm not sure that we will. We can always go back. Just listening to the radio. Tom is not coming to the sighting because he just found a lioness. How's that, Wumpy? Is that at all good to you? Just watch her behaviour again. This is quite a similar position to the one that we first parked in. I'm going to keep my legs inside the car this time. VM reckons that she reacts to that. I'm convinced it's sound. But I'll take VM's advice and we'll see what happens. What we forget quite often, of course, is that our camera ops, or cameramen, spend as much time out here as we do. And they learn, if they're vaguely interested, a massive amount of animal behaviour. Do you hear me paying you a compliment there, Liam? Yeah. Just in case you missed it. People often do. It's because it's so rare. What a very pleasant way to spend a Tuesday afternoon. My brother is probably just preparing to head home in the traffic. Now, Trix88, you ask a fascinating one about whether or not I think these wild cats recognize voices, individual voices of the guides, or whether they just sort of see the vehicles and hear the sounds of human voices and don't believe there's any real difference. I think they do. I think that whether they recognize us as individuals, I'm not sure. Can they hear the difference between different voices? Yes, they can, because I've seen leopards react to loud voices versus soft ones. I can't believe that an animal that has senses as acute as this wouldn't pick up in some way the different intonation of, say, my voice versus Brent's. I mean, we couldn't have more different voices, and I can't believe that she wouldn't recognize that. Whether she associates the difference, however, in our voices with any kind of emotion or any kind of experience, I don't know. Can she tell the difference? I've no doubt. Does she associate them with anything? In other words, does it therefore bring some kind of meaning to her life? I don't know. Elephants, yes, absolutely. Elephants react to different people differently. They tend to recognize people, definitely. Leopards, I don't see why not, but I'm not sure. It's mostly on account of the fact that they're very poor at English. Or Shangaan. That's it. Your cat speaks English, does she? Excellent English. That's very good. She's enjoying her food. Alright, let us go back to Tristan now. He is watching the water, the hippopotami, and the sun sinking.
Well, I'm down at Chitwa Dam, and it's always just a wonderful place to sit. We've obviously got the hippos as per normal, and the collared pratincoles, which have just made an arrival lately, and I wonder if we're going to get the same numbers as what we had last year. They were a surprise find last year in the numbers that they did come and kind of roost in Chitwa Dam, and I wonder if we're going to have the same situation that we had last year, if we're going to get lots of them. I think at one time Brent had over 30 or 40 of them here at the dam, so we had that one juvenile at one point, and now we've got some of the adults that have arrived, and as you can see there's a few hippos that are also here, and they're starting to slowly but surely make their way towards the island, which I'd imagine would mean that they'd come out. But it's a beautiful place to be at this time of the day. I always love being at Chitwa at this time. It seems as though things do happen, and so while it seems fairly kind of normal that we've got the hippos and everything else, it's a place where the longer you sit, I tend to find the more actually happens around you. So sometimes if you're patient and you actually watch and you look, you tend to be able to find things, you hear things, and so maybe we'll get lucky and we'll be able to find one of Hosanna or maybe even Tumba. I've just been thinking about Tumba while we were sitting here. It's been a while since I've seen him, so I would like to see him. There you can see some swallows that are flying around. Now which swallows they are, I'm not 100% sure, and Seb's doing a fantastic job following them, because swallows have got to be one of the hardest birds to follow out here. In fact, that's what VM tells me. And there's a little three-banded plover, and I wonder where our little plover chick is. I haven't seen it this afternoon. I've been looking around. Maybe it's here with that three-banded plover running around. It doesn't seem like it though. Normally it's not too far from where the adult is. Nope, it doesn't seem like it, so it's just the adult by itself at this stage. I wonder where our green-backed herons are. They must also be around here somewhere. I'm pretty sure the green-backed herons will be around too, because at the end of the day they are entertaining ones to watch at this time of the evening, because it's now that they start hunting all the fish that get pushed up into the shallows, and with the wind that's blowing you can see there's a bit of a ruffle on Chitwa's water, and so that means that we'll have a situation where that bird will be quite well camouflaged and will be able to see fish and not be seen as easily as if it was a perfectly smooth clear day. So it'll be interesting to find them. I think if we go up the dam wall we might see them just down below, but we'll do that just a little bit later. Lutoro, you say you wonder if this water is cold. I wonder. I have, funnily enough, this might sound very odd, but I have once put my feet in Chitwa Dam, and it wasn't actually too bad. But that was in the middle of summer, in around January, and it seems as though, obviously, it depends, I think, on weather conditions, but I would say that it is probably fairly chilly at the moment. It's a big source of water, and will take a lot of heat for all of this to warm up. Seb, can I ask you just to go straight across onto the other side of Chitwa there? There's two Nyala bulls that seem as though they're having a little clash. Every now and then I see them kind of putting their horns together, which is unusual for Nyala bulls. Generally Nyala males tend to... Is that one only got one broken horn? It does have a broken horn, doesn't it? Looks like it.
The one on the right.
The one on the right looks like it has a broken horn, but they generally don't fight too much. Nyala bulls are normally animals that settle their differences very gently, and they will try and display and use that philo-erection and increase the size of their body by pushing all their hairs up. And so to see them actually going after each other with horns is quite strange. They generally don't do that, but I see that the one on the right does actually have two complete horns, which is good. And normally with Nyala you actually don't see too many broken horns. Things like kudu, impalas, wildebeest, buffalo, you do see broken horns on those guys because they tend to fight quite a bit. But these guys, because they spend a lot of their time just being very relaxed and not trying to actually go after one another, very seldom do you see a one-horned nyala, or a broken horn nyala, should I say. You can see also a couple of waterbuck that are around, a couple of impalas. It's all just very relaxing out on Chitwa Dam. I think everybody's just happy that the clouds have somewhat come over and a bit of a breeze has started, because it was stiflingly hot today, and it meant that a lot of these animals, particularly things like these waterbuck, which generally spend a lot of time in these open sections, must have had a really tough day. It must have been really warm for them, and I'm sure they're loving the fact that it's just cooling off ever so slightly after the day what we've had. Philip, that's an interesting question, and why don't we have a little look? Because you're asking me, you want to know what my favorite sunset vantage point is on the property. Well, I think it depends. I mean, it depends on what's kind of going on, but generally for me, Chitwa is one of my favorites, and in particular Chitwa Dam Wall. And so while we're here, I might as well show you why I say it is one of my favorites. It doesn't have the best view dropping off, but the actual view of the sunset is incredibly good. So from Chitwa Dam Wall, you normally get this amazing sunset that kind of goes off the back of the dam wall, so you get these clouds, and obviously today is not going to be the best because the cloud layer is going to block that sunshine and we're not going to see too much, but generally you'll have that sun just setting over the backs of these big marula trees that you see at the bottom there, and if you get clouds, well, then you get one of the most incredible sunset vistas from this particular section. The other place that I really do enjoy, well, there's two others. One is Treehouse Dam on the dam wall there, and the other one is on Drakensberg Road, so not too far from where James is at the moment. That's another area that I really do enjoy watching the sun go down. But Chitwa Dam is one of my favorites, not only because the sun sets, but because of the amount of life around the sunset. So, you sit at this dam and the sun is going down, and you can hear hippos calling, you have Egyptian geese, you have the red-billed buffalo weavers that are making lots of noises in the background, and so you typically have a really kind of nice time just sitting and enjoying everything, not only the sunset but everything else that happens around you. But it seems as though all of our antelope species are relishing the fact that Tingana and Hosana are not here today, because they weren't too far from here yesterday, and it must have caused a bit of a panic amongst a lot of these antelope species, because I can see lots and lots and lots of waterbuck and impalas all on the far side, slowly but surely coming down. Eventually we're going to start seeing them coming towards the water, so maybe just now when we kind of spend a bit of time in this area, maybe they'll come down towards the water section itself, and we'll get some nice sort of lines of impalas drinking. Also, it's a good time for ellies to arrive, so it's worth just sitting around Chitwa Dam and kind of having a look. But you never know, maybe Hosana is actually behind the dam wall. I was just thinking to myself now, it might be worth checking there and just going through to our Chitwa oasis and just checking if there is any sign of Hosana that side. Oh, hello little Egyptian goose chick, where have you come from? Now, I haven't seen any Egyptian goose chicks here of this size over the last few weeks, so I don't know where this little one has come from. You see, there it is, a small little one next to one of the adults. Hello little thing, how cute is that? And where are all the rest of you? It's very strange just to have one little chick of that size. They're normally a few of them that survive, and you can see it's a bit wet, it was floating in the water, but that is just super cute. Again, this is why I like being here, is there's so much to see, from little plovers to lapwings to pratincoles, baby hippos like we've had, baby crocodiles over the last few weeks as well. So it just seems as though there's always something going on. And that little chick, if you look at the size of the foot of the adult in comparison to the size of that little chick, it is absolutely minute. How cute is that? And it's little waddling along, all fluffy. Very, very cool. I wonder, like I say, what happened to the rest of them. Maybe a monitor lizard got stuck in at the nest, or you never know, maybe the catfish have picked them off already. But I'm surprised, because we hear often, so we would have seen a new clutch of these guys being hatching and kind of moving around. So the rest of them, I think, must have been destroyed in the nest, unfortunately. I don't think they were caught. But what are you looking for? You're pecking at everything. You're very curious. How cute is that? I do enjoy spending time around here. Careful now, don't fall into the water. I suppose it's okay if it does fall into the water. It's built to be around water and to sit on top of the water, and so I suppose if any bird was to fall into water, this would be a good one. But the problem is that the depth of Chitwa Dam Wall is quite deep, and so lots of big fish lurk in this area, and crocodiles and various other things. So, Philip, we're back to our fluffy scale, and you're wondering where this individual is on the fluffy scale. Well, I think this is as fluffy could be. So, I'm going to give this individual a 8.5 out of 10. So, it is one of the fluffier individuals. Mom and dad, not so much, but when they're babies like this, 8.5. So, as Kirsty says, bordering Pomeranian, not quite as fluffy as a Pomeranian, but is still very fluffy and a lot more wobbly on its legs too, because it seems as though it's having a tough time going over all these erosion patches on the edge of the dam wall. Very cool to see, though. Off you go. Now, it's going to be very tough for this little one to survive. Chitwa Dam is not a friendly place for a small bird like that. Like I said, there's crocodiles, there's fish eagles, there's catfish, there's leopards, there's all these kind of things, and so it's going to have a tough time to keep up and to make sure it survives. The adults have probably, though, in a way, it actually might have a better chance than, a lot of the bigger clutches, because the adult's attention is only on one. They only have to look after one, and they only have to make sure one is looked and is safe. So maybe it does actually have a better chance than trying to look after 7 or 8 of them like we've seen in the past. But I somehow think when they take to water that this little one is going to be sucked under at some point. I've unfortunately seen it happen a few times with these little ones. So Eric the Poet, I like that. That's actually one of my favorites. You say that this little Egyptian goose chick's backside looks like a killer whale's face. Well, I think if you spoke to the Egyptian goose chick, it would tell you how insanely fierce and scary it is as a little chicken, that it would chase anything away just like a killer whale would. But of course we know differently, and we know that Egyptian goose chick has unfortunately got a very tough time of it. But I do like that analogy, and I like the way that you think about it. I think it's very similar, and I agree with you in a lot of ways. Now, while we're here, I just want to quickly have a little look at if our crocs are around, because it's always good to catch up with the little crocodiles. They tend to spend a lot of time in this particular section by this fallen over tree here, so it's always a good place just to come see. Oh, there's a big crocodile. We'll get to the little crocodiles just now, but there's a very large crocodile that is sitting there. So that's Vlad, that is out on the bank. Now, Vlad unfortunately was named before Brent realized she was a girl and before she had a clutch of eggs, and so sits here quite often, I'm sure, to protect these little ones to some degree. So even though she's probably not the best mother, is not as good a mother as something like a leopard would be, where it's constantly looking after its young ones. It is a little bit different in a lot of ways, because their young are able to move around freely and look after themselves from quite early on. Obviously, they don't have the same size and teeth and all of those kind of things, but they are able to move and to find their way. So she's not quite the same caring mother as what you'll see from some of the cats. It will be a lot harder for her to keep them kind of going. But it is massive, that crocodile. When you see it in comparison to those little ones, and because I haven't seen Vlad up close for quite some time, and particularly not on the edge of a waterhole very close to where the little ones occur, and I can tell you that little one, if we had to stretch out those little ones, it would be about the size of that head, maybe even a little bit smaller. That head is probably about the same size, if not bigger, than what those small crocodiles are at the moment. So it's amazing, the size difference, and amazing that little crocodile that we've been seeing is going to end up in a situation where it's going to be that size, and one of these massive monstrous females that will roam around big water sources like this. What surprises me about Chitwa, though, is that there is only ever the 2 that I've seen. We once had a third one in here, and unfortunately that third one got chased away, and it went eventually and lived in on Little Gowrie, a treehouse dam, and spent a lot of time there. But it's strange that there's only ever these 2. I would have thought after years and years and years of them being in here that maybe some of the little baby crocs would have survived, and we would have had a situation where we had bigger crocs lying on the banks of this particular section. I mean, she's a large girl, and at the height of her kind of laying career, if you want to call it that, she'll be able to lay as much as 90 eggs, and so you would think out of that sort of percentage that some of them would have survived, but alas, it seems not. Maybe Boris is to blame, and Boris has been eating its offspring. Now, from one toothy, scaly, slithery reptile, I believe James Henry, who is not a toothy, scaly, slithery reptile of his own, but he does have one that is slightly different to our crocodile.
Well, it is scaly. I don't know how slithery it is. It is, of course, a black mamba. Isn't it, Viam?
No,
it's a cobra. It's not a black mamba. You know that, of course, by the legs, don't you? Racing cobra. Very nice. We are, of course, talking nonsense. It is a very relaxed water monitor lizard. And I can see it's relaxed from the fact that it has almost face-planted itself onto the soil there. You can see his left front leg stretched behind him. Like well, I suppose the last time I lay like that was when I was receiving a massage from a physiotherapist, so I wasn't quite as relaxed as that. I think I was probably howling with pain. Just testing the wind as it blows, pushing the tongue out, seeing if there are any pheromones on the wind. What do you smell? Do you smell Viem's aftershave lotion? I must just tell you, talking of smells, that thing is lucky that we don't have Alicia with us. Alicia, of course, is a new member of the production team all the way from the United States of America. She wears a volume of insecticide on her legs, the likes of which, well, let's just say this lizard will be running for cover from about 200 paces. Now look how relaxed he is. He put his head on his wrist, as one might if one was lying on one's front on the beach contemplating life. Alicia is listening. She says thank you. I don't think she means it. I think she's being quite sarcastic about it. Don't blame her. It's an amazing tail there. Yes, for swimming, but absolutely used for defense. It is used as a slashing tool when anything tries to give the lizard trouble. Now, Lady Starfire, you have a child, 8 years old, sitting watching, saying that's not a snake, it's a spider. And if there is one great thing that I can say I have achieved at Safari Live, it was to contribute to the sarcastic education of your 8-year-old. I am so very pleased with myself. In fact, I actually think it might be time for me to retire on the back end of such an achievement. Well done, young 8-year-old son of Lady Starfire. May your joy and use of sarcasm, Ben, I believe your name is, may it give you as much happiness and fulfillment as it has given me. I will warn you that others may well not take it and derive the same level of fulfillment as you will from it. But certainly I have enjoyed it very much. Well done. Back to the spider. Oh, there's a little terrapin scuttling into the water past the front of the spider. I don't think that a lizard that size could take a terrapin that size, but maybe. Ooh, and there's a sandpiper. I think it's a common one. Let's have a look. You see it there, VMP? It is not a common sandpiper. I believe it to be a wood sandpiper. It's very exciting. Did you have a nice time overseas? I have a new appreciation for sandpipers and other migratory birds this year, having skipped winter entirely. It's something I'd like to do every year from now on. You can certainly see the appeal. We sort of had a winter in Kenya, I suppose, but it really didn't get cold. But for some nights. Shelley, you say, would it ever make a good pet? I'm assuming you're not referring to the wood sandpiper, which I imagine would make a very uninspiring pet. I don't think it would come when you called it. I don't think it would crawl up into bed with you. I don't know about these lizards. Of course, people keep iguanas, don't they? and they seem to be fairly happy pets. Reptiles in general, and I'm not for 1 second advocating the kidnapping of animals from their natural habitats, but reptiles in general do keep in captivity because once they've eaten, they see very little point in continuing with any sort of activity. And so you can keep snakes, and you can keep, I imagine, lizards as well. I don't know this for sure, I'm just talking off the top of my head. I imagine you can keep them relatively satisfied with relatively little effort. I don't think you have to take them for a walk every day like you might with, Fenton, for example, my father's dog, who demands at least 1 walk a day. That said, it would be quite amusing to see somebody walking down the road, or the beach perhaps, with one of these fellows on a leash. Don't you think? Kat, I think it's a membrane. You say, what prevents water going into the lizard's huge ear hole? I think there's a membrane there. I also think you probably do. I wonder if it closes. I don't know. I'm guessing here. It probably closes, but I imagine there are times when water does get in there, same as it does in our ears, and then it probably hops on one leg like we do to empty the water out. What I mean by that, of course, is it probably just shakes its head and the water will come out. But quite possibly it has a membrane that stops too much water getting in. We're going to disappear as this lizard disappears into its hole. Isn't that cool? Maybe it's got a little nest there. That's going to be something to keep watching. That's very exciting. While we do that, Tristan has got actually quite a special bird to show you.
I do indeed. So hidden behind the branches and in the thickets is a black-crowned night heron. Now, for some of you, you will have seen this bird, and I've been trying to get it on camera, and the last time I came here, unfortunately, it kind of flew away because of the little baby hippo, and we forgot to really look for it. But today it is at least somewhat visible. Oh, it's going to the toilet, which means I don't think it's going to stick around for too much longer. It might fly off. Now, this night heron is not the most commonly seen bird. We don't see them that often. They like to be in these thick areas, and look at the size of its eye before it does fly off. Its eye is much larger than that of the other herons that we see. So if you compare that to a green-backed heron or to things like Goliath or purple or grey herons, their eyes tend to be much smaller in relation to the size of their body than what this night heron is, and that's because it's active at night, and so therefore that bigger eye is to allow light into the eye and to be able to see better in the darkness of night. And it seems as though it loves this little section behind Chitwa Dam Wall. I was hoping it would be here. You can see how well it camouflages, so it's the perfect kind of place for a night heron to spend time. They like dense, thick areas, and so it's the perfect area for it to kind of just go unnoticed, and such a wonderful thing to see. And if it wasn't for the fact that we've been seeing leopards behind here, no one would have ever known that this bird was actually behind the dam wall. So very, very cool to see, and it's not one that I'm sure a lot of you have on your lists. I know a lot of you do keep lists, and some of you do have it, but I surmise that there will be some of you that this will be a new addition to your list, especially some of you that are have just started your list. This is a really nice bird to add to it. Very, very cool. There is one other night heron that we do get in this area, which I will show you fairly shortly. Just give me 2 seconds. So there is one other, and it's the one that I would love to see a bit more of. I have seen it, but I would love to see more of it in this particular area, and it's called a white-backed night heron. So very different in looks to the black-crowned night heron. You can see, look at the eye again, massive as well, black head, rusty sort of neck area, and very different looking. The other bird that we're looking at the moment, sorry Seb, is this individual. So I'm going to get a photo now which is a little bit more clear. So that's the black crown. You can see it's very difficult to confuse the two of them. They really are a very similar very different kind of bird, but very cool. So Gary, congratulations, you say a new bird for you, number 107. I'm sure, Gary, we're going to add a few more birds to your list, given that it is summer and there's lots of birds that are arriving back, have arrived back already. it should mean that we should find quite a few. I did see a European roller today, which is the first one I've seen. James said he saw one 2 days ago, which is exciting. So they should start dominating things, and we can add those, and then we get carmine bee-eaters, and well, there's lots of birds around, so hopefully we'll have a really good birding summer with lots of nice species added to your list. Right, I'm going to leave our night heron in peace because I don't want it to leave this particular section. It's been very obliging and allowed us at least some view of it. I wonder if there's a pair here or if it's just the one. Interesting to know. I can only see one at the moment, but it's not to say there isn't another one somewhere in here. I know Hosanna, when he was around, was sniffing about in the sort of grasses there and on those trees, and I wonder if maybe they weren't trying to nest and Hosanna disturbed their nest. You know how he is. He's always kind of curious and sniffing and going around all over the place, so I wonder if that's not the case. I did also find tracks for what looks like Tingana from last night in this particular area, but they do go towards Little Gowrie and Vessels, so unfortunately not much I can do about that. But I thought it was worthwhile checking, given that Hosanna was seen very close to where Thandi was this afternoon. Maybe, just maybe, that pushed him south and deeper into our area, and we're back on this side. But it seems as though nope, he hasn't come this way, and maybe he's still somewhere where Thandi is and is just hiding out there. No one's actually spotted him yet. It wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. You know how curious he is, and he seems not to fear any other leopards and always just kind of tagging along, which is a very endearing quality in some ways, but also a quality that might get him into a bit of trouble later in life. Right, so I think there's somebody on top here, so I hope they're not having a drink stop, otherwise I'll be in trouble. They do indeed. Oopsie. So I'm just going to, unfortunately, gate crash a little drink stop, which I didn't mean to. I didn't know they were actually here, so I'm just going to go past them and say very sorry very quickly. We'll have to try and sneak past, and hopefully we won't go noticed. Of course we are going to be noticed, but while I do that, let's go back across to James and see what he's up to. Hello, Haile. Sorry, man.
Well, we are slowly making our way back towards the camp now. We're going to do Ingwe Alley. I don't think we're going to see Hosanna. We might if he's done a particularly hot desert marathon this morning, but I don't think he will have. I'm rather hoping that large elephant bull that we had earlier will be on quarantine clearings. Unless he's gone. He hasn't pitched up at the damn cam, has he? Right, not that can be seen in the final control room. What do you think, Viam? Ingwe Alley or straight to the damn cam? Damn cam, says Viam. Hello, Ben, my sarcastic friend, aged 8. You want to know how many leopards live here at Djuma? Well, we can count them if you like. We've got Thandi, we've got Shadow, who's her sister. We've got Shadow's daughter, whose name is not Barbara. We've got however many cubs Thandi's got. Let's pretend they're 2 for now, because that's quite probable. So that's 5. Then we've got Tingana that lives around here too, so that's 6. We've got Hosanna, who spends some time here as well, so that's 7. And then sometimes 1 or 2 leopards come onto here from the north, like Mvula, so that would be 8. And then what else happens at Chitwa? I suppose Inkanyeni might sometimes come to Chitwa where we're allowed to go, so let's call that 9. Yeah, so let's say between 9 and 10 leopards. And Tamba, of course, so that's 10. And Djuma. Well, okay, you can have Djuma, although I have seen him once, so maybe that's 12 then. But at any one time, remember, of course, Ben, that they're not always on Djuma, because Djuma is just one piece of a much bigger piece of land. And so those leopards can, while we're not allowed to cross the boundaries, the leopards can cross them whenever they want to. So Thandi is sometimes not on Djuma, she's sometimes on a reserve south of us called Little Gowrie, and sometimes, or most of the time, Djuma lives on Biffle's Hook, which is to the north of us. You don't need to remember all these names, but just remember that when I say that there are 12 leopards that use this area, they're not always on Djuma. Right, we're getting close to the water now. Hello, Eric the poet. We've thought about this ourselves. Mrs. Wahlberg is in her home there. I think she's on an eggy. While we look at Mrs. Wahlberg in her home there, Eric the poet, you say, can you imagine Charles Dance, a.k.a. Tyrone Lannister, or Jeremy Irons, a.k.a. Scar, doing the voiceovers for Safari Live? You think it would be quite dramatic? Oh, Eric the poet, I think it would be fantastically dramatic, scary even, very Game of Thrones. Mrs. Wahlberg doesn't think much of my attempted dramatic narration of her existence. In fact, she has turned her back on me and is indicating that I should, well, sod off and leave her alone, basically. Sorry, my dear. Remember last year they didn't manage to raise any youngsters, and let's hope very much that we find them. Tristan apparently is disappointed I didn't put on an American accent for that, because not because he thinks Charles Dance or Jeremy Irons are American, but because we've had an American doing our voiceovers for our last TV show. Lions. He had a very deep voice, gravelly, and he spoke very slowly. This is just the beginning. Safari Live. Lions racing across the open plains, chasing wildebeest, killing them by the dozen, devouring them, feeding their cubs. This is Safari Live, and it's only the beginning. I think he must have smoked at least 60 cigarettes a day to be able to speak in this manner. There are no elephants down there. We're going up to quarantine clearings. That's enough of that. I will tell you, however, that there are a number of words that I really love to hear Americans say. And the one is the word squirrel. Now, we have a number of Americans working with us at the moment, and one of them is the size of Khal Drogo from Game of Thrones. He's 6 feet and 8 inches tall. He eats the same as the Nkahuma Pride combined. And, I mean, he's not a fat man by any stretch of the imagination. He's in very good shape. But he's an enormous human being. And I said... He said, I forget the context of it, but there was a squirrel on the screen, and he said, there's a squirrel. So I said, a what? He said, a squirrel. So I said, what is a squirrel? He said, not a squirrel, a squirrel. Which to me sounded like exactly the same word. So that's one I really enjoy. There is the vast herd of wildebeest. Let us look at them. And to those of you who are actually American will have to excuse my poor American accent. I find it one of the most difficult to effect, because of course there are hundreds of them. There they are. Now, what VM pointed, what was you that pointed this out to me, VM, I think, was that although most things in the Mara are bigger than they are here, or certainly it seems that way, these wildebeest, I think, are substantially larger. Well, and VM pointed it out to me. It was you, wasn't it, VM? They are substantially larger than their East African cousins. And I'd say by about 10%. And you know what? I mean, maybe this is just my bias, but I think they're better looking. I quite like the fact that they don't have white beards, they've got black beards. I'm almost certainly just being biased. But I still think they're rather magnificent. Sweet history, you say, is Ryan taller than Brent? Ryan is Khal Drogo, of course. Yes, I know that Brent is the tallest person in the universe, but in fact, Khal Drogo is even taller than he. Khal Drogo is 6 feet and 8 inches tall. Brent is about 6 feet and 4 inches tall. That makes Khal Drogo exactly 1 foot taller than I am, which is quite astonishing. He weighs about the same as one of those wildebeest. Yes, no, Joy, I agree with you. You say you like the white beards on the wildebeest. I like them too. I just quite like these ones as well. And I'm really pleased we have a herd here now. I hope they stick around for a while. It's always nice to have them here. The impala in the background. They're such a fun thing to start off a walk with, you know, when you walk out of camp and you pop up here and there are the wildebeest and some zebra sometimes and impala. And we were talking about that fear circle, which is a really nice discussion we had about fear circles earlier on. And these wildebeest have a particularly large fear circle. They don't like us getting close at all. The wind is starting to blow as the evening starts to close in, and I'm hoping very much that we will have some kind of exciting weather. Of course, exciting summer weather at night constitutes or is constituted of thunder, lightning, rain. That is going to be it from us today. Thank you very much for joining us. Very nice to be back on the car. Very nice to be sitting with some leopards. Thank you, Viam. There we are, there is his large thumb. Thank you mostly, of course, to all of you for joining us on our sunset safari. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 0500. Until then, bye-bye.